Old Napa, new Napa. Is Napa suffering an identity crisis or is it just evolution? I don't know. We're going to talk about it today. Welcome back to Cellar Notes. Joe, my man, welcome back.
Thanks
Good
for
to see you,
having me.
brother. Awesome. So, Old Napa. That's what we're doing today. We're talking Old Napa, new Napa. I know Napa has a very special place in your heart. You mentioned a bit off camera, it cut your bones there, so to speak, or whatever. So, jump right in, man. Talk to me about what are you thinking when it comes to, what comes to mind when you hear, Napa as a whole?
Yeah, what a topic for a wine professional,
Right?
especially nowadays, especially in the Americas. We owe a lot of our wine culture today from that small little place over in California. I say small because compared to other wine regions, it is minuscule.
Yeah.
But almost every acreage is under vine at this point, and probably the second most expensive, wine growing region outside of Burgundy.
Yeah.
So just what a crazy evolution it's had. And yeah, I mean, from one sommelier to the other, everyone has their opinions about the place, where the wines are now, where they were back then. And but I think all of us owe some sort of debt of gratitude to what has happened over the last 200 years or so in the Napa Valley, as well as the range of wines that have come out of there over those 200 or so years.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool, very cool. So when you talk about your start, you mentioned cutting your bones there. So it was a lot of red wines. I'm assuming steakhouse. I think you mentioned.
Yeah. So
you were doing initially.
Exactly. So I made my bones out in Chicago, of course. As mentioned on the previous, is RPM Steak opened circa 2014. And yeah, I mean, steakhouse vibe was all Cabernet, right? Cabernet is super Tuscan, Northern Rhone, a lot of Syrah.
Gotcha.
But mainly people were there.
Just double check the camera.
Yeah, people were there to drink, Cabernet and eat their fillets and their ribeyes. And what better food and wine pairing is there? One of the most classic there is.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with beef and big red wine.
Yeah.
So if we're thinking like stay right there for a second when we talk about like your experience, right? Often you hear, California can be a bit heavy-handed, right? Some of the reds can be very big, the new Napa, if you will, or whatever. Like what comes to mind when you think about that, especially being someone that you said has been experienced and again, cutting your bones in Napa for so long.
Yeah, I think to put all of the wines of Napa Valley in a basket would be disingenuous, for me or for anyone. I think especially now, the range of wines being made tend to lend themselves in a certain direction for certain purposes. In the end, it's a business. I think that's what they have found that most of their consumers enjoy drinking. We can talk about the history of Napa in a minute or so. I mean, I could probably do it in a minute, but it'll take us hours to do it all encompassing.
It's not an elevator pitch type of a...
Yeah, but it was never that. It didn't used to be that style. And nowadays, it has turned with, the Parker Wine Advocate scores back in, the late 1900s. It really catapulted the winemaking styles of the place to be engineered in a certain direction for a lot of winemakers, not all of them, and a lot of wineries. So you see the gambit of the wines being made in a certain style because that's what they find most of their guests, most of the people buying their wines enjoy. And there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Gotcha. Well, let's go back. So originally, if you think like Old Napa, you think, refined, restrained, a little, maybe a little Bordeaux influence.
I mean, we can go far as back as the 1800s, I guess. I mean, obviously there's maybe some people doing their studies that know this stuff, but for those that don't, I mean, we can go back to the 1830s where George Yant kind of was pushed to California. It was part of Mexico at the time, right? So they were passing out land grants for people to go do agricultural things in the place. And George Yant took that upon himself to go and really started and planted the first vineyard in Napa Valley around that time.
Wow, okay.
That is where, I believe Dominus probably is today, they say, which is, Christian Moyac's making and was making delicious wines from our guy Petrus in Bordeaux.
Yeah.
And that's where George Yant planted that first vineyard, I believe to the Mission variety, which is, for those studying, Listan Prieto, which you can't really find anywhere in the world right now, maybe outside of the Canaries, the Canary Islands.
Okay.
It's kind of extinct, but that's what was available to him to plant, and that's what they planted. we'll do this in a 30-second span, but you go forward. Charles Krug comes in, builds the first winery, the true winery in Napa Valley.
Yeah.
And again, the wine was different. It was planted to a lot of Zinfandel. It was planted to a lot of German varietals. Napa and California in particular, I don't want to just say Napa, had a big German influence. You have Walter Schug, who was with Joseph Phelps, and Joseph Phelps planted a lot of Riesling, a lot of Scheureben, a lot of these crazy varietals.
Riesling, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge German influence in California at the time. And it wasn't until, you circa Prohibition, and then you have the Gold Rush and all these things that kind of navigated what Napa and brought Napa to what it is today. Had changed the landscape of what it is. You have BV, Georges Latour, who was making wine for the clergy and probably one of the only people making wines during Prohibition at the time.
Wow.
Napa in the late 1800s.
You're going deep in the bag, man.
I mean, hey, you wanted me on the pod.
No, go for it. Go for it. I love it. I love it.
The late 1800s, I feel like, and you can't just talk about this exquisite place in 1 second. So just giving it the time it deserves in a way. But, the late 1800s, like, Napa boomed a little bit from that Georgiant era to pre-Prohibition. It went from, these 1, 2, 3 wineries to almost 100 plus wineries at the time. People were really putting acreage under vine for the most part. And Prohibition, once it smacked, it kind of wiped all that away, all that hard work, and kind of made that area start from nothing, to be quite honest with you. There were a few wineries that still operated due to, certain things with the clergy where they were making wine for the church, which then kind of, again, catapult forward. They're shipping these wines, these grapes across county lines to the other side of the country, and they weren't making, very sound wines. No refrigeration, no refrigerated rail cars. So they were turning to varietals like the aforementioned Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, some of these varietals that were thicker skin, higher alcohol, to be able to withstand that journey.
Yeah. So that was my understanding and my studies is understanding. Early Napa, one of the main focuses was the site for balance, location, longevity, things of that nature. So it's funny you mentioned how like all of that seemed to be or was disrupted like pre-Prohibition and kind of like changing the landscape of things. Cool.
We can get into geography of Napa anytime you want. Super cool, and again, a pretty exquisite place. And then Prohibition hits. Obviously, people start to come back to the well a little bit, and you have these pioneers now at the time. You had Georgiant, you had these Charles Krugs of the world, catapult 100 years forward, and just think like that was Prohibition was an amendment to the Constitution. Like that doesn't happen.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay. You and I wouldn't be here talking about
That's right. And then you have these pioneers that started to come back to the area for a number of different reasons. One of them being, one of the bottles in front of us. But it wasn't him so much as it was his father, a good Italian man, Cesare Mondavi. So he came from the Midwest, was kind of like a village spokesperson and really, brought his family to make bulk wine. And then it was, Robert and the guys over at Heights and that really started to make these boutique, Phelps, that really started to make these boutique high-end quality style of just really chiseled, really well made, lower alcohol, but really balanced styles of Cabernet in the Valley and really kind of catapulted it for the rest of its time.
Awesome. All right, so let's fast forward a little bit and moving into the year is 1976.
Yeah, cool.
You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, of course.
The Judgement. How does that? How do you feel that impacted? Napa's influence, their the direction that they decided to take wine at that point, winemakers, because obviously, that's a huge deal at the time that tasting or what have you. And for those of you that don't understand or know what I'm talking about, I'm referencing the Judgement of Paris. If you want to speak to that a bit more.
Yeah, one that definitely shines a light on California winemaking and California wines at the time. And the world of wine in Europe has been, going and chugging along now for quite some time. We are a newer wine region in the world of wine in terms of like making great vitis vinifera and making great juice. The Judgement of Paris he speaks about was basically a few Napa, Cabernet, and Chardonnay producers went to Paris for a blind judgment against the top French wines of the world. some of the best Burgundy, some of the best Bordeaux, and then of course our beloved Napa. And Napa Cab won first prize in
Yep.
Stag's Leap, and a Napa Chardonnay won first prize.
Down goes Frazier
in
for the
in
upset.
Chateau Montelena. That's right. You just see Napa standing over him.
Like
Ali.
Yeah, I mean, and that's such an instrumental time because I mean it completely like shifts the balance, right? It obviously boosts the confidence of winemakers in Napa as well as global perception as to what Napa was doing.
I think that definitely opened a lot of people's eyes, and I mean outside of America. I mean everyone was starting to drink and enjoy these great wines coming from the West Coast, and I think it really opened the rest of the world's eyes as far as what we could do with such a beautiful climate and area that we were growing these grapes in and making these great wines. But what we were lucky enough to do was compound that with, I think, something that doesn't get as much love and appreciation, and definitely gets a lot of people look down upon, is the Robert Parker and the Wine Advocate. 4 or 5 years later, that was really the tail end of the '70s, early '80s. So that was 4 or 5 years later, and I think those two things united really exploded and helped explode wine culture in America.
Gotcha. Cool. So now that's a perfect segue because now we're thinking new Napa, bigger wines, riper vines, higher alcohol, hotter climates. We talked about that off camera as well, like, global warming, things of that nature, and all of these things affecting the vines. So what do you think about the new Napa as to what old Napa was and kind of like this evolution of what Napa has become and is becoming?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I'll say something that was taught. They're both delicious. Let's start there. I think they're both delicious in their own right. And the most important thing in the wine world, my grandfather, my peach soaking and wine grandfather from our first pod was, quick story. He asked me for a decaf espresso, and I looked at him like, why do you want to drink decaf espresso? And he's like, I like the taste of it. Taste is taste. Who are you to tell me what I enjoy? And I think
sure.
I take that very much to heart. It's written in our wine book, that saying, because everyone's taste is different and everyone can really enjoy whatever style of wine they like.
That's a key point. I want to stay there for a minute and like drive that home. Like that is a key point because I think that's one of the things that we run into, and we discussed this a bit in our previous recording, which stay tuned for that, guys, coming out soon. Sure. The bias and lack of objectivity when it comes to like newer people getting into wine is like you'll see someone drinking something, it's like, oh my God, that's not wine. And but how are you to tell this person that, who are you to tell this person that their palate is not telling them what their palate is telling them, and them liking what they like, right? As we said off camera, like all people getting introduced to wine is better for wine. The more people we can introduce, the more people we can get involved is obviously better for wine. So I found that to be a really, really good point.
Rising tide floats all boats. It's true. Who are we to tell someone else what they want to enjoy or what to enjoy?
No, I couldn't agree more, man.
But to answer your question, so I think back in the day, obviously it was a little cooler of a climate. The wines were being made with not as much technology, not as much extraction or ripening, not as much oak. And it lended itself to just a little bit more balance, a little bit more je ne sais quoi, if you will, lower alcohols, a little more acidity, not as much richness and glycerol in the palate as there is today. And, now, grapes are baking in the sun, hanging on, a little more hang time and see a little bit more oak. And I think a lot of people lend that to the Parker scale and the point system and what that has done to the area. But I think there's something to be enjoyed about both when done really well. I think, you could call it quote unquote cult Napa. Those producers and the wines of, the pioneers, there's a place and time for both, and they're both meant to be enjoyed. Some just meant to be enjoyed with a few more vintages under the belt.
Gotcha. So let's, I want to go back because we touched on it briefly about the scoring system. So what do you think when it comes to like, the influence of critics and score systems, as well as now the rise of cult wines or whatever. Oh, and stay tuned. Got a really, really special treat for you guys at the end of this. But like the rise of cult wines and the influence of critics and scores, because I mean, one could argue they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah. I think what we forget is no one gets into wine because they just do it for fun. I mean, first
No.
we forget that it's a business for them too, and it's a very tough business to be profitable and to be in for the long haul. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of money, and it's a business. And I think no matter what is happening, as I mentioned, rising tide floats all boats. I think the point system just made wine more approachable for the wine novice, the average consumer, to understand this crazy thing that we call viticulture.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the first pod, right? It's everything. It's like what goes into it for terroir, the earth, the wind, the rain, the art, the artistry of the winemaking, the vinification of it, the élevage of it. There's so many things that go into this crazy complex beverage that is delicious. But to just understand it using the point system, I think, I can't tell you the last time, sommeliers are like, oh, I bought this wine based on points, or they tell their guests, well, it was anything but 100-point vintage.
Yeah.
But it allowed the general consumer to really be able to dive in with some sort of understanding of like, okay, somebody who knows more than I am is telling me that this wine is above some of the others. And I think and can detest that it's maybe worth spending a little extra money.
It made it palatable for like the novice and the person being introduced to it. It's almost like it's a go by.
I think something that most sommeliers don't understand is that they probably wouldn't have jobs if it wasn't for this thing that they scoff at. And it kind of boils my blood a little bit.
Hot take.
Yeah, no, and I'm not here to speak ill of anyone.
No, of course not.
I just think that we don't give it as much love and respect as we should, because it has kind of taken guest perception out of like what we as sommeliers tell them.
Gotcha.
They can easily look it up on their phone or whatever, and I think maybe there's a little disdain for that. But I think there wouldn't be the wine culture and the wine world and the people loving wine today without that scale, without
I agree.
That point in time.
Yeah, no. I totally agree. It's almost like I don't want to say a syllabus, but like it gives you a go by in a sense to like, and just starting out, like I was sharing with you, my intro to wine was Zinfandels, Old Vine Zins, right? And which again, when you speaking to like the historical element of like the Germans influence in Napa at that time or whatever, but that was based on it being a wine that I had with some beef. I got it based on a score, and the score also had the tasting notes under it, right? And this was years and years ago or whatever, but like that gave me an understanding of what to look for now. Absolutely. And thinking about seeing flavors. So to your point, it's a great go by, as well as like you said, I think it definitely paved the way. And sometimes it's almost like we forget where we came from,
for sure.
Type of a
which is funny
deal.
We just mentioned how Napa did kind of start in that Zinfandel range when it really was taking its rise. Like being that shipper variety across country, like it was able to withstand that. A lot of the old vines, you see old vine on bottles of Zinfandel all the time. A lot of the old vineyards under still old vines were planted in Cellar Notes Zinfandel, and I think the term claret, in the world of wine, came from those claret blends of Zin back in the day. So it's funny that's kind of was your starter wine. That was Napa's kind of starter red. Cabernet didn't really take over until the late 1900s. So
wow. All right, so sticking with staying with New Napa, you mentioned the critical. We touched on it briefly as far as like the critical response. Like some of these wines can be too big or too like heavy-handed. Some will say even lacking subtlety for some palates.
Totally.
Again, objective when it comes to thinking about those things or whatever. Every palate is different, right? So like you hear, we're getting a lot of, and again we touched on the last episode. Wine is dead. Napa. Like as far as here and the States go or whatever, like what do you think about that? Like when it comes to the critical response, because obviously, like you said, we want more people getting involved with wine, and that's not necessarily helping, right?
Yeah, I think the people are making wine better. I think technology allows them to do a lot more from their couch. I think, you're not the temperature of vats, keeping your tanks certain temperatures, technology's done a lot for the place. I think the brilliant minds that are being being taught by the brilliant minds of the past.
Sure.
One comes to mind is Corson, right? Kathy, training her daughter to be,
Legend.
Yeah, of course,
Legend.
a legend, right? John Kongsgaard, his son. So all kind of just coming up, and those were like such great pioneers of the place, making incredible wines, and their kids are going to take the reins and do amazing things, and already have started to do amazing things. So I think that it's amazing. Things are delicious.
I agree.
In the words of a friend and really amazing, talented winemaker, Tony Biaggi, said, as long as it's not too goopy.
Yeah.
It's a term that he used to describe Napa Cab that really resonated with me, and I think that we hone that in with like the extraction, the oak, and whatnot. As long as it has some really great balance and acidity and tannin, and the complexity that you get from the great terroir of Napa, and it's not using any artificial coloring or flavoring or oak or whatever. I think it is and still will be delicious. And again, being born in a steakhouse and drinking so much Napa Cabernet from different eras, from different producers.
Sure.
There's something to be said about the greatness of, the realms of the world, or the, those more cultish kind of memento mori, these beautiful bond, right? They're doing amazing, cool, incredible things. But it's very different than the Harlans of the past, or the Duns, or the Diamond Creeks, or the, you can rattle them all off, the Dominuses. So the Mondavis. So it just, it's just different, and that's not a bad thing. It's I think a great thing. And the pendulums, again, we were talking on the first pod, it all is very cyclical. Wine isn't dead; it's just coming back around.
Exactly. I couldn't agree with that more. I think that if we're thinking and talking like balance in this conversation, right? You'll have those that may say that, but at the same time, it's unfair. And not only unfair, but just not true to put all Napa wines.
Remember when vodka went into that weird flavored Pinnacle whipped cream vodka?
Yeah.
There was you could buy a vodka under with any flavor you could possibly think of.
Yeah, they had all sorts of cotton candies, apples, all that stuff.
And now it's starting to revert back to like the mean of people starting to drink high end vodka, quote unquote. But I think more well made products, spirits, wine, it always kind of comes back. It has its time, and I think that goopier style of Cabernet had its time, and I think people are just starting to pull the restraints back a little bit and really continue, if they were doing it in the past, and training new generations to make these really exquisite Cabernets that you see.
That's what I was just going to touch on next. Is that was my next point when it comes to like the balance. I think that to your point, like this next generation and these, the children of these legends are coming in, and they have the technology along with the knowledge, and applying that to this more refined, restrained, subtle approach, or what have you. And like you said, all of these things come around or whatever. It's kind of like, baggy jeans versus straight leg or whatever. It was out one time, now it's in or whatever, and people pick the trends. That's what I think a lot of, I wouldn't say the problem. I think a lot of what the narrative comes from and is driven is, we have so much access. We have the internet. We have social media. So many people have so many things to say and express their opinions, which is fine. But that, I think, is what drives these trendy topics.
Yeah, it's always about finding a positive. Without that social media, it's the ability to get it in front of more people, the technology to make it easier on the people making the juice. I mean, it's all encompassing, and I think. It's a good thing. I think we put too much shame into some. We grasp onto something, we hold on to it, and we talk it to death or talk it down a bunch. But it's a good thing. It all is, and it helps you get rid of the bad and keep moving forward with the good.
No, I love it. So cool, man. Before we get into our surprise or sneak peek, tell us about what we got here today, man.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't talk about old and new Napa without talking about Mondavi. Obviously, It's very similar to Dom Perignon, in the sense that people think like Dom Perignon and Champagne are just he invented this thought that he invented Champagne. He didn't, but he was a pioneer in how it was made and the assemblage of these master blends. We spoke of Krug before, and they just did such an amazing thing for the place. And when you talk about Napa Valley, I mean, a lot of people think that Mondavi was like the pioneer who brought Napa Cabernet to the forefront, and there were many before him. We talked about Charles Krug in the immediate part of the pod, and I think the Mondavi winery where it sits today, they bought Charles Krug Winery,
Right.
the original, right in, the meat of 30A in Napa Valley, and made this beautiful winery. I think Robert was the visionary. He was,
Oh, absolutely.
we talked about, quick tangent, of course, we talk about BV Georges Latour going to France because they were making wine for the clergy. It wasn't like making the trips. And he was like, I need someone that knows how to make this juice, and goes and finds Chelyshev in Bordeaux, and brings, Andrei Chelyshev back, who becomes this, pioneer of winemaking and this teacher, this Miyagi of winemaking. And then you have this like person like Robert Mondavi, who was the showman, who was the floor guy, the sommelier, master, who kind of helped take this delicious juice, this good wine at the time, and push it to the boundaries of being great, and then also being the salesperson he was, put it into the forefront. So it's tough to talk about this place without this guy and these wines. And this is 92 Mondavi Reserve, and that's
beautiful
that
wine.
Leaner style, that beautiful
wine
style. So
beautiful wine, lots of dark fruit. You got the cassis in there. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't Mondavi responsible for like the introduction of barrel aging, or namely French oak, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I don't know that answer, so I don't want to speak wrong. It's kind of like
stumped you.
You did. That's the sommelier 101. If you don't know the answer, don't tell your guests.
No. I love it. Smart move.
But I think using higher quality barrels and higher quality oak was really the difference between his father Cesare, who was making and wanting to make bulk wine. And then obviously, as family rifts happen, like they did with the Mondavis, like a lot of other power families, Robert went on to make wanted to make finer wine with finer ingredients and finer oak, which kind of propelled to that realm of things. And yeah, I think you go and find these beautiful, you're not just using any old French oak, you're using, these beautiful barriques from these certain coopers, and every day you're just getting better and better.
No, I love that.
A true pioneer, and again, people scoff at Mondavi on the shelves, but it wouldn't be as beautiful of a place and as in the forefront of the wine conversation as it would stay without these people. So
it's easier to, the low hanging fruit is always the name, or something like you say. You'll scoff at something because of something that you may have heard without understanding. But to your point, the influence, like we're thankful to Cesare's father for even having that influence of starting, and then Robert kind of taking the mantle and running with it to give us what this is today, or whatever.
30. I mean, I've had as old as 70s Pinots from Mondavi, 80s. Yeah, Pinot Noir is not even like this big burly Cabernet, right?
Yeah,
and they are exquisite. Like obviously every bottle lives a different life, but some and most have been truly, truly delicious and really wonderful, and withstood the test of time, even without the knowledge of 50 extra years that we have today, and the technology of the 60 plus years.
This goes to show you, man. It goes to show you that like they knew something. They knew something, and again, technology has only made it better. But that's not to say that, like you said, those 70-year-old bottles and some of those things or whatever are still not good.
I think it heightens the senses a little bit to know that you're like drinking a part of history, right?
Without question.
It was before the internet, before cell phones, before this was being made with so much less hoopla and technology and things, and MapQuest, and it's just funny, the things that we every day use, they didn't have, but they still made this delicious stuff.
In healthcare, we'd call it minimally invasive.
There you go.
It was not touched, it was not disturbed as much. It just did let it do its thing, and it shows through. It shows through, even like the slight brick ring on it or whatever. Like, I mean, it's a 34-year-old bottle, essentially. Like, that's what 2/3 of our lives or what have you. But and it could still sit. It could still sleep a little longer or whatever. Absolutely. But it's so funny when I have wines like this. I'm always tempted to inquire with someone like yourself as to pairings, right? Like, what would you pair this with when it comes to food? Me personally, a wine like this, I kind of like to enjoy it on its own. Yeah. I don't want to get into the minutia of other flavors and things of that nature. But if I was looking to pair this with something, what would be a go-to?
Yeah, I think you want to look at it more in a Bordelais style of pairing. We drink a lot of Bordeaux with age. Napa with age tends to lend itself to have that rustic, ethereal component to it, that complexity. As a wine ages, it loses body and structure and muscle, and gains so much more elegance and complexity and flavor and aromatics as you talk to, which is kind of why you want to do enjoy it on its own. But in the end, I think wine's meant to elevate food, and food is meant to elevate wine, and it does good to have them together.
That's the hospitality, it's the service guy in
but
you, man.
I think if you're gonna have this much funk in wine, you want that much funk in food. And I think a nice dry aged New York strip, a little leaner cut with some funk to it, is basically a leaner cab with some funk to it. So it's a cop out to say a steak, but in the grand scheme of things, there's a lot of different cuts of meat. But I think a nice dry aged New York strip, a little leaner. The tannins have fallen away, right? This is like my grandfather, right? He's extremely complex, but he is a lot weaker than he used to be. We're fresher, younger, stronger. This is like drinking our, but as far as the food goes, I like the dry aged strip call. Very, very.
No, I love that. And listen, you're never going to twist my arm when it comes to a steak of any sort.
Put some truffles on top.
That's where I thought you were going. That's where I thought you would go, because that's what I'm getting in my head, like some truffles, some funky mushrooms, even morels.
Exactly.
That could
put some
go
mushrooms
with this.
on the plate with your dried strip and some truffle. You're good to go.
No, I love it. Like I'm getting almost like notes from this or whatever.
It.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm tasting tarragon as I'm thinking about this, like super tarragon
savory.
Or something like that. Super savory. Yeah, really cool stuff.
It's funny because we didn't talk about fruit, but when you talk about at all, but when you talk about Napa, it's dark black fruit and currant.
Look at the irony in that. That's what's like. It's all fruit. It's all fruit. It's all fruit, and we haven't mentioned fruit once.
Yeah, I think that's what makes these things special.
Good point. Very good point. Very good point. Awesome. All right, man. So, Mondavi, this is absolutely delicious. I mean, I don't know. People are going to always look for debates and things to discuss when it comes to, old versus new, evolution, identity crisis, things of that nature. I think Napa is Napa. Napa is what it is, right? Like it, love it, hate it, whatever. Everyone has their own opinion, their own, more importantly, as you said, their own palate.
That's what makes wine great. It's what makes this so amazing, is like when we're doing training, my mentor, it's like the first day I sat in the chair and was, we're learning about wine. It's like there's no wrong answer, right? Like you can say what you're getting out of it, or what you taste, or what you enjoy, and who are we to tell you you're wrong? And I think that's what makes it so amazing. You can like what you want to. Taste is taste.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I got ragged on a bit for my affinity or love for French wines, and while I do, I mean, who doesn't, right? But I'm open to so many other and different varietals as well. I love all wine. Like I'm not here to say like I'm planting my frag and Burgundy or anything like that.
People tend, especially they get comfortable. They drink the same producer every night. There's cellars full of it. The world of wine is so vast. There's so much greatness out there. A lot of people doing amazing things. Chile, Argentina, Bordeaux, like new and old world. People are finding new ways to make delicious juice. And I think you owe it to yourself to at least try. Yeah. And you'll be surprised how many other things from around the world that you enjoy.
I love that. Speaking of which, that South American influence, you got to get the Vic.
Yeah.
Get one of those in here. I'll definitely get one of those.
Maybe it'll be a Treasure Tuesday
with you. Yeah, maybe. That'd be awesome. Speaking of Treasure Tuesday, we got a special Treasure Tuesday coming up this week. Something again, cult wine. I'm just gonna shut the hell up. I'll let you get into it.
Yeah, I mean,
tell us what we got coming up this week.
I love it. This is a cool segue. Being tomorrow, if you don't know, Carmella's on Tuesdays does something really special called Treasure Tuesdays. We open a true gem from around the world of wine. We've been doing it since our inception, so we're 7 months strong. And I find that tomorrow we're going to do something truly special for you guys, and we're going to open 2019 Screaming Eagle Cabernet for Napa. And pour it by the ounce, by the glass, for the first come, first serve. Doors open at 4:00. We hope to see you guys there. Be here. Really, really special wine. I think it's only fitting to do this pod with you on this topic, and then to open the legend and the most iconic and one of the most expensive but delicious and tough to find treasures out there.
Yeah, you got to be on like a mailing list for that. My understanding.
I don't think they even do visits. I mean, there are. I think Jay-Z was turned away. I mean, I think they're very close to home with what they do. But what they do is really special, and kudos to them for creating such a cult brand, and they're winning at business, and the juice in the bottle is sensational. So 4 o'clock tomorrow.
I love it. And the 19 varietal, is there a specific reason you decided to go with that one, or was it just the only one available at the time?
No. I had some pickings of some late 90s, early 2000s. I wanted to appeal to as many people as possible. That's the kind of the saying of Carmella's in totality.
Yeah.
Come one, come all. Whatever you do, you're going to come in and enjoy good juice, no matter what you enjoy to drink. And I didn't want to scare away some by pouring a super old vintage or an older cuvee.
It's great awareness.
So I went with and I think even those, any wine lover is going to come for Screaming Eagle. But not everyone will enjoy the taste. And I think that pouring a slightly younger vintage was the smart move. So everyone could enjoy what's in the glass, as opposed to it being too rustic or too earthy or what have you. And they spend, a decent chunk of change on an ounce of history. So
awesome. I love that. So in closing, man, give me your thoughts. Is wine meant to be analyzed or experienced? I think I know where we're going here, but like analyzed or experienced?
I think if you've heard me chat about the world of wine, you know where I'm going with
this. That's why I said I'm pretty sure I got where you're going with this one.
I think there's a lot of fun in analyzing what's in the glass. I think it's like playing a hand of euchre. The best part is talking about it after the fact.
Yeah.
But it's meant to be enjoyed with the closest people, good food. It's the essence of civilization, the art of living. It's just a beautiful thing. It's just meant to be enjoyed. Your best glass of wine won't be the best, most expensive wine you've ever had. I guarantee it.
No.
It'll be the moment that was the most fun and enjoyable for you, with greatness in the glass. And I think it's a little bit everything. So it's 100% meant to be enjoyed with good people, with good company.
Love it. I figured I had to ask. I figured that much. All right, last one, man. And I mean, evolution or overreaction when it comes to Napa?
Overreaction. Yeah. I have a lot of faith and love for the place, a lot of faith and love for the wines, and I love that it's a talking point.
Yeah.
I hope the prices, or we as restaurateurs, can become and make this greatness more approachable.
Sure.
On our lists, I think that there's a little bit along the way of the system that can break a little bit, and I think it has to and will. But it's an overreaction. I mean, the wines are coming out of Napa today are sensational.
Yeah.
Tony, Brad, all these genius winemakers of the place are, Thomas. They're doing incredible stuff, and their predecessors are going to continue to raise the bar.
I agree.
And compete with the world's best. So keep scooping them up and keep enjoying them.
I agree, man. And I love that. To that point, and getting out of here, I think that that's a very, very good point that you made there, and getting wine as restaurateurs, getting it to a point to where we can bring more people in, get it at a decent, entryway, a price point or whatever. Like, again, I can't, say again how brilliant I think the Treasure Tuesday idea is in getting people in and being able to try some of these higher price point wines. And that's what we're about here with the Cellar Notes thing, right? Is being able to, provide that education, kind of give a peek behind the curtain to the secret sauce of things, and, in the mind of what you're doing, what it takes, what you're thinking about, how you're operating, how you're looking to, like you said, having the foresight and the awareness to think to yourself, like, you know what, we'll go at 19 instead of an older vintage, just based on mass appeal and being able to cater to multiple people. That's what it's about: education, approachable, and, fun, so to speak. So, Joe, man, again, cheers, my man. As always, a pleasure.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for doing this, and looking forward to having some fun with you. We'll see. I'm excited to see what we got for the next coming Treasure Tuesdays, and yeah, man, we'll have some fun.
Cheers to that.
Cheers, man. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Charlie.
Take care.